after playing Blinks, I just gotta play something that's not that. So I'm gonna review Sonic Unleashed, a game that's very hard to give a fair score to, so challenge accepted. I had this at the 9.5 spot for my top 10 worst Sonic games list before I took it down, and also have it as number 8 on my top 10 best Sonic games. As I said, it's really hard to say if it's good or bad because there's two different gameplay mechanics at work here. Is it good? Is it bad? Let's analyze this, shall we? Before we dive into the game itself, let's look at the game that preceded it, Sonic 2006. That game was a travesty and almost killed the Sonic franchise, and don't deny it, you know it's true. A game that bad is hard to recover from. Look at Bubsy 3D. That game was so bad that it killed the franchise, but the Bubsy games were never really that good anyway. But I do have a better argument prepared. Earthworm Jim 3D killed its franchise. And here's the thing. Earthworm Jim was just as successful as Sonic and Mario. Not only did he have games, but there were cartoons, merchandise, and comics. Not many video game characters hit that status of popularity. And because of the long gap between Earthworm Jim 2 and the sequel, the franchise was already starting to wane, and Earthworm Jim 3D was the bullet that put the franchise down. As you can see, it only takes one bad game to ruin a franchise, and like I said in Sonic 2006, Sega is lucky that Sonic is so ungodly popular. So in an attempt to get both of Sonic's feet out of the grave, they took a break from Sonic and we got Knight's Journey of Dreams, a boring, bastardized sequel to Nights into Dreams. And when they went back to the drawing board, they decided to heavily borrow from the Sonic Rush series of games. So when a few teasers showed up, it was mostly Sonic running on a 2D plane. But as more information was revealed, we would learn that the camera would transition from 3D to 2D, which sounded really good, and they threw in the boost ability. But then more and more information was leaked and we were introduced to the werehog concept. I sense a disturbance in the Force, as if millions of Sonic fans cried out in terror, were suddenly silenced. It's really not all that surprising. After all, there were a few games going around with the whole light-dark mechanic, like Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess, and Metroid Prime Echoes, and those games were popular, so why not abuse this already tired concept? So when seeing the werehog concept in action, it didn't look like it would impede the high-speed gameplay all that much. After all, the day and night mechanic didn't seem like it was going to be too annoying. And it's really not that bad, although there is one thing that grinds this game to a screeching halt, and I don't mean that you've rear-ended someone's screeching halt, no, I mean that you've hit head-on into a brick wall screeching halt with brains splattered everywhere. Before I bring up my main problem with the game, let's talk about the controls. This was the game where Sonic Team decided to do away with the action button. Thank God. But they did something stupid. They made the homing attack the same button as the boost. Okay, why? When you get the air boost ability, it causes problems in certain areas. Also, we're already used to using the jump button for the homing attack, so it's a bit disorientating. And the homing attack is glitched sometimes. Like in Jungle Run when you're swinging around the poles in the beginning, Sonic may just homing attack right into the bottomless pit. But I do like that almost every ability has its own button. It gives you a much better sense of control. I'll tell you one thing, I was completely won over. I wanted to kiss someone at Sega, because after Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic 2006, the Fiasco action button was finally gone, and I was happy to see more traditional controls. I like the story, but it feels like they just rewrote the story from Sonic Adventure 1. Eggman comes up with a plan to harness the power of Dark Gaia, a creature that lives inside the planet. So he cracks open the planet with a giant laser. Dark Gaia emerges and falls apart, which causes even more chaos around the world. Sonic somehow becomes a werehog, which is really a misnomer, as the word were is an archaic term for man, so werewolf means man-wolf. So the proper term for this form that Sonic is in would either be hedge-wolf or wolf-hog. And this is a pretty weird plot hole. You can make the argument that Sonic was infused with Dark Gaia's power, but again, how? Sonic was in space when he was transformed, he wasn't on Earth. Dark Gaia's power did not recoil into Eggman's laser to infuse Sonic. If it was the emeralds being drained, how could the emeralds being drained do that to Sonic? I suppose it's one of those things that you just have to accept. It happened, don't ask any questions, just move along. Sonic meets a little red fairy thing with amnesia and calls him Chip, and the two head off on an adventure to the Emerald Temples to recharge the gems and put the pieces of the planet back together. Then, in a stroke of plot convenience, Chip is sucked into a wall at the second-to-last temple and is told who he is and his purpose, and he remembers everything. Sonic stops Eggman, fights Dark Gaia, and that's the end of the game. While I like the story, it feels like it's a rewrite of Sonic Adventure 1, 2, and Sonic 2006. And I would like Eggman to use his genius to build giant death machines again, like the Death Egg. Look at Sonic Adventure 1, Sonic Adventure 2, and Sonic 2006, Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Colors, Sonic Generations, and all of them. Eggman finds some creature that he wants to do his bidding. Chaos, Project Shadow, Iblis, Dark Gaia, the Wisps, and the Time Eater. 7 out of the 9 main console games, Eggman is trying to get some powerful creature to do his bidding, and it bites him in the ass at the end. Does he learn from it? No, he doesn't. IQ of 300, my ass. I also find Chip to be annoying and pointless as he serves almost no purpose. You can remove him from the story and nothing really changes because Sonic is the one doing all the work. He really doesn't drive the plot. Say what you want about Elise. Yeah, she gets kidnapped like 4 times. But at least she drives Sonic's story in Sonic 2006, and the entirety of that game's story is focused on her and her connection to the Flames of Disaster. I understand that Chip is supposed to stop Dark Gaia, so his role is pivotal, but it's not built upon until the end in a Deus Ex Machina. I'm saying that it could have been built upon over time, letting the character develop as he remembers who he is, and not just copping out towards the end. I'm dead serious. Play this game and watch Chip. From beginning to the very end, he doesn't really do anything except for be more of a distraction. I do like the graphics and animation. It's done really well. It looks like it was done by a movie studio, not a game company. I like the art style that they went with where the humans are very stylized and cartoonish looking. It doesn't have that Who Framed Roger Rabbit look to it like how Sonic 06 did. I like the music, but there is one track I cannot stand because it plays all the time. And that's when you're in the night stages. Whenever you enter battle, the music changes to this jazz music, and it's the same track every single time. There is no battle music that's specific to the level, and there's times where you'll kill off a horde of enemies and the battle music fades away, but lo and behold, there was one that you missed, so you attack it and the battle music starts all over again. Did they really think that no one would get tired of that track? Because after the first night stage, you're already tired of hearing it. And speaking of night stages, this game got polarizing reviews because of them. And you know, they're not as bad as you think. They're programmed pretty well, although they do feel like God of War. I found these stages to be pretty easy as I mostly use the long-range punch attacks, so there's really no challenge here. It's repetitive and there's very little enemy variety and they come in swarms and sometimes there's so many that you just wonder when it's going to end. Speaking of ending, the night stages do overstay their welcome, taking anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes to complete. The night levels are also linear, so there's no multiple paths at all. It's a straight shot from beginning to end with the occasional puzzle solving. And by puzzle solving, I mean finding a brightly colored rock behind a door and putting it in its matching square. There really is no exploring in the night stages where the platforming can be pretty fun. I did enjoy swinging and climbing around the levels. One thing I found perplexing is that you can only grab onto certain ledges. It would be nice to grab onto any ledge, as it would allow for more exploration and would help the stages not feel so linear. But for what it's worth, the day stages aren't linear at all. You do get multiple paths to take, and this is the fastest Sonic has ever run in his career. He runs a lot faster in this game than he does in Generations. Yeah, I'm going to be comparing this to Sonic Generations a lot, and don't bother bringing up Sonic Colors. I didn't play it, and bringing it up is not going to help this review in any way, shape, or form. The day stages transition from 3D to 2D in a really nice way. It's very seamless and does a good job of keeping you in that zone without interrupting the high-speed action. You'll also gain abilities along the way, like wall jumping, sliding, air boosting, and stomping. There's also a drift, but it's really not that good. This is really flawed because if you're going too fast, Sonic will pretty much just go straight. The drift is much better in Generations. It's much tighter and you can actually make the tight corners. Empire City and Shamar are the best examples of the flawed drifting. And I think this is one of the most difficult Sonic games that I've ever played, and I like it. It's a really good challenge, something that the series so desperately needs. I can go through all the other Sonic games and not die a single time. The classic Genesis games, the modern games, all of them I can make my bitch. Except for Sonic Unleashed, and it's because it's not only fast, it's too fast, and that is not a complaint. I really like it that way. Sonic feels a lot more acrobatic in Unleashed than he does in Generations, and he controls a lot better. I do like in the areas where you're on auto run, you can only move left or right while you boost into enemies that you can move the analog stick to move left or right. When you come to these areas in Generations, you can only use the side step, as Sonic would just lean left or right if you try to move with the analog stick. And I gotta bring this up again, what is with the Japanese and grinding? You can make grinding fun, like Dust and Elysian Tale, or rewarding like World of Warcraft. But if you play a JRPG, grinding is boring and repetitive, unless it's Pokemon. And Sonic Unleashed has grinding and a lot of it. When you kill enemies, you get these yellow diamonds that you can use to increase Sonic's stats. If you want my advice, just pour all your experience into the Wolf Hog's health. It's really the only stat that you're going to need and the only stat that noticeably increases. Putting all of your experience into strength doesn't really feel like it's doing anything, as even the weakest enemies still take several hits to kill. And one thing that makes no sense is that if you're normal Sonic, the experience diamonds are automatically collected as they're drawn to you. But when you're Wolf Hog Sonic, you have to collect them manually as they'll just sit there. Apparently normal Sonic has a magnet attached to his butt because there can be no other explanation as to why. But the one thing that brings this game to a grinding halt is that you need to collect Sun and Moon medals that are scattered throughout the stages, hub worlds, and town areas. If you don't have enough medals, you can't go on to the next stage. The first time I ever played this game, I had a hard time finding the Sun medals. This is the second time I played it, and this time I had a hard time finding the moon medals. And towards the end, you need to have a lot of medals. Sometimes you just get stuck and are forced to find whichever type of medal you need. This is really the only bad thing about the game because you have to go out of your way to get those medals. And there are times when the game doesn't respond to button inputs, leading to unfair damage or death.
But wait, the internet cried out, what about the Quicktime Events?
Yeah, this game has Quicktime Events. Poorly implemented Quicktime Events. In the night stages, there are pain as their finishing moves and are random button inputs. If you fail them, you take damage and the enemy practically gets all their health back. And you have to do this for boss fights too. The day stages have these too, where you need to input a combination of buttons to make it to higher areas. However, there are times where you have to do this not to die. And in the last stage, it gets ridiculous when you need to input 3 different combinations just for one section. I used to hate the night stages, but now I kinda like them. Maybe it's a guilty pleasure. I like that Sonic makes quips, like after he completes a trick or passes through a checkpoint. I miss that. I think that Sonic Unleashed was judged unfairly mainly for it being different, and I'll always give a game some extra points for trying to be different even if it falters a little.
While my opinion of Unleashed has changed over time, I do find it to be an alright experience, and just because a game is different from others in its series doesn't mean it's bad.
I found this to be a good game, and if you found this to be a good review, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and check out more of my videos, starting with these two.